That's Reasonable. This is now the final installment of the series, That's Reasonable. We have been following it now for the last few weeks, and we've been trying to focus on this idea that God has gifted every human being with reason. Now, I'd like to be clear about it. Reason is a different capacity given to us by God. It's not the same as intelligence or logic or anything like that. It's its own faculty that God has given us to give us the power to be able to reach beyond our own selves, to be able to pierce through certain mysteries, if you will, to have the capacity to understand right from wrong, good and bad, and to the point where the church has even said that the use of reason begins in someone around the age of 7. So it's not even something that we wait for till adulthood. It's something that is given to us, and that's why at the age of 7, we invite children to make a reconciliation and receive Holy Communion. They have the capacity to understand what they're doing. So keep this in mind. When we're talking about reasonableness, it's a power that can be used for good, but also for evil. There are people who use that same faculty to try to get away with things or to make excuses for things. So many people will just, use their reason incorrectly. Like what we've seen building up to this weekend. If you recall, the parables that we have been following have given us an indication of how reason works and how it can be used selfishly. So if you look a couple of weeks ago, we had the prodigal son. Remember the dynamic within the family and how that family, the younger son, what does he do? Give me my share. Off I go because I'm going to use my reason to serve me. Because it's about me. I want what I want, and I want you to give me what you have because it belongs to me, and I'm going to serve me. But it didn't end there, did it? The older son too. The older son did not have a good heart, in effect, because when the other son comes back, what does he say? What did you do for me? You owe me. You gave me nothing. I've been serving. I've been slaving. Sound a little bit like this weekend's gospel in there, maybe? So anyhow, then we move on to that wily steward, the one who basically said, it's all about me. There's no way I'm going to get fired from this job and go dig ditches. I'm not going to do manual labor. That's well beneath me. So therefore, I'll figure out, through the power of reason, some crafty way that everybody will like me, and they'll take me into their homes and give me their food and let me live this lifestyle that I've become so accustomed to. Which then segues very powerfully into the one last week, and I always say that's the gospel that bugs me the most. The rich man and Lazarus. The rich man, let's face it, if you want to see self-centered and selfishness, it was the epitome of it. I always ask myself, really though, what did he do that warranted hell? And a lot of people want to focus on the fact that he didn't feed the poor, but that wasn't it. It was his self-centeredness, his selfishness. And the way we can know that is, what's the first request he makes in hell? Abraham, send the beggar down to give me some water. I'm in torment. He didn't even worry about his brothers first. And so we see the power of reason is a great thing, but one of the gauges that I've always found is if I'm using it for me and to only serve me and get what I want, that's a defective use of reason. It's a selfish use of reason. We live in a culture today where self-centeredness is kind of applauded, and we encourage people today to, like take care of numero uno. You got to take care of yourself. Don't worry about anybody else. You do for you what you need to get done. And that's what our culture keeps telling us. But my experience is that really doesn't promote goodness. It doesn't promote love. It doesn't promote charity. And so we have to ask ourselves, if we're going to use reason, are we using reason to reach out of ourselves to another? Is our reason being focused for the other? Particularly, first and foremost, the other being God, and then those around us. There should be a selflessness to the use of reason. That's how we can gauge whether or not we're using a reason for the power of sin. We're sinning if it's always selfish. It's always about me. It's always what I want. That's a sin because there's no love there. There can't be love if I'm just using you for my own desires. And that's why when we get to today's gospel, it flashes back now. So in August, I did a whole series on faith, if you recall. And I wanted the two back-to-back, faith and reason. And now we're right back to where we started, kind of, because Jesus says, increase our faith. Well, if you had faith the size of a mustard seed, you could save the tree. The natural order would obey your command. It would be cast into the sea. What a powerful image Jesus gives us. But then he goes on to say, and I believe he gives us the most beautiful thing that we need to understand. God owes us nothing. I want to be clear about that. This servant comes in. He's not owed anything. If we take the imagery the way it kind of comes across, the master is God, and the servant just comes in from doing their job and says, and continue to do your job. And we're supposed to be in the place of the servant. Did you feel that way in the gospel? Did it come across that way? We're in the place of the servant. We're supposed to do good because it's good to do. I'm supposed to be there for others because it's good to do. And yet, quite often today, that's just not the case. See, faith and reason have to work together. And as it was beautifully said, when you have faith without reason, that dwindles into superstition. And there are a lot of people I've met who are faithful people, but more to the superstitious side. They have the faith, but they really haven't thought it through. And that's why we need the reason to balance the faith. But reason without faith leads us into nihilism and narcissism. Now think about it. Reason, and there's a lot of reasonable people out there, but if reason isn't guided by faith, it's not orienting itself to the good. It's not trying to achieve. See, like, if I truly love you, I will spend myself for your good, not for my own good. And faith teaches us that. Jesus gives us the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, to love one another, to care for one another, to love as you have been loved by God. Faith and reason together. Let's face it, if you look around, there's a lot of reasonable people in our world today. There might be a lot of reasonable politicians or reasonable, like talking heads on TV. They're making some good arguments, but it's without faith. And when it's without faith, it tends to become narcissistic. And that's that me. It's about me. Serve me. Give me. Do what I want. Do it my way. And that I just find to be very destructive. And so here we are. Faithful, reasonable people. True, faithful, reasonable people. As I said a little bit earlier, if we're truly faithful people, we understand God has already purchased our salvation through the blood of his Son, Jesus Christ. It's done. He owes us nothing. Even though we are horrible sinners, he made it possible that we can get into heaven on no merit of our own. And all he asks for us in return is to be faithful, reasonable people, to go into the world and serve others because it's right to do. Think of how many, I remember when I was growing up, there were things that, like, you're a family, right? When you're living as a family, you all have to be contributing, because if you're not all contributing, is the family going to thrive? And so I remember it was like, all right, my father says, take out the garbage. And I said, was that going to get my allowance for that? No. You do that because it's right to do. You learn to take care of things. You learn how to clean. You learn how to, this is just, he was teaching me how to be a good and faithful person by doing what's right to do. You don't wait for somebody else. Just do it. Take care of it. Think of a world that's filled with Christians, of Christians doing that for one another. Faith and reason operating together. What a wonderful, wonderful existence it is. Because what is my concern? My concern is for you. My concern, and the ultimate good is you getting into heaven. So my concern, my love, is shown I can express it most acutely when I'm desiring your good. See, that's a good definition right there. If we wanted to talk about love, If I truly love you, I desire your good. I don't desire you as a good. And we hear that in those 3 parables these last few weeks. You're there for my good. You give me what I want because I want it, because I can't dig ditches. No. I desire your good, and the ultimate good is helping you get into heaven, working together as you help me to do the same. That, my dear brothers and sisters, is what we're supposed to do. That's what we're just supposed to do. You know, there's too many people today. I watch so many people today who will do a good thing, but expect something for it. And it always spoils it for me. Since I've been a priest, anytime a young person comes up and talks about a service project, you know, I have to do a service project for confirmation, so I have to give you 10 hours, then I'll stop doing it. Well, then I said, I won't sign it. If you're not going to do it beyond the 10 hours, you're not doing it for the right reason. You're doing it to get something for you. Young people will go off. I've seen them take these projects on. They'll get on a plane and they'll go build in some part of the world. They'll build houses for homeless people. And they'll come back and they wanted it on their resume so they can get into a better college. So you didn't build it because there were people who were suffering in the world. You did it for yourself. That's backwards. But yet this is what we've cultivated in many of us. So many of us expect quid pro quo. I did good, therefore you owe me something. We go before God and we want to give God that whole thing of, you know, God, I'm such a good person. You have to let me into heaven. You have to do for me what I ask you. I showed up every week for a whole hour. Don't you owe me, God? He owes you nothing. I've had people, I've literally had people come up to me and they'll say things like, you know, boy, when I get to the pearly gates, I've got some questions that I need to get answered. And I laugh at them and I say, don't work that way. You're going to be the one that's going to have to answer questions because your Lord is going to ask you, where were you? When did you? Were you just an unprofitable servant doing what you were supposed to do, which is the good of caring for another, of seeing their plight, of really opening your heart up and saying, I am concerned for your good, not my own. And if we all do it together, yeah, it's beautiful. And that's why Jesus said today, just do what you're supposed to do, which is to love and to care. And that's faith and reason working together. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, I encourage you, spend more time this week rereading this gospel. Spend a little more time just praying over all of these gospels, all of these parables we've read for the last few weeks. Take the time each day and ponder them. And then ask yourself, where am I at? Have I been so influenced by the culture around me that I'm always self-serving, self-centered? And there are times I even discover, yeah, I am, and I have to work on that. That's why we're a people of repentance. That's why God owes us nothing. He only says to us, if you falter, just keep coming. My mercy is that big. My love is that powerful. And when you experience it, you're going to want to share it with someone else. And so keep going and keep going. Reflect on those questions. Ask yourself those questions. Who am I truly? Am I here to serve God? Am I here to help others? Or am I just here to get out of life what belongs to me? Do I have that narcissistic, nihilistic overtone? Because I know, surrounded by the culture that I'm surrounded by, it is a struggle every day to break that cycle and to break out of that mentality and to once again use my reason to pierce beyond into the mystery that God has given. And that mystery that He desires for you and for me is love, forgiveness, mercy, joy. And the only way we'll ever really truly get there is when we suffer enough of putting down ourself so that we can give ourselves to another. God loves us so much. Let's love one another as He has loved us. God bless you.